Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Chuck Dixon back once again to answer questions about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books and have done so for several decades. So this is where you yourself, individual citizen of the world, can just send me questions and I'll answer them here. And I'll mention your name on the internet. How special is that? Okay, Cool Guy 9000. That's not his real name. Have you seen any films directed by Michael Mann? And if so, what do you think of them? Well, I think I've seen every film directed by Michael Mann, which is probably answers your question right there, but I'll go into greater detail. I first became aware of Michael Mann when he was a writer on a television show in the 70s called Police Story. He wrote a number of episodes that I really, really liked. And I paid attention and, kept looking for his name here and there. But the next time I saw his name that I took note of was when he wrote and directed Thief. Thief is probably my second favorite Michael Mann movie. It is a terrific, based in reality, grounded heist film. It's not really a heist movie. It's about a guy who pulls heists. It's about a bank burglar, which, if you don't know what a bank burglar is, it's in the job description. He breaks into banks. He breaks into safes. There are bank burglars, and these are highly professional, highly trained, highly skilled criminals, and you rarely hear about their exploits because they're successful, and they very often do not get caught. And our justice system doesn't like to talk about criminals who got away with it, so we don't hear that much about it. And of course, they're a rare breed. Not many people acquire the skills and tools and expertise necessary to break into bank vaults. Just a terrific portrait film and ultimately a revenge movie. And James Caan in one of his best performances. I always like James Caan, but this one stands out. And a very stylishly made film, as Michael Mann's films generally are. But there's always substance there. Next time Michael Mann's name exploded on the public was Miami Vice. Love this show. Never missed an episode. Very, again, stylish. He sort of set the mood for 80s crime stories. Many people imitated this. No one equaled it. And it had Mann's, as fantastic and, hip as the show made a great effort to be. It was still very much grounded in reality, or in the real grubby aspects of crime, the day-to-day stuff. An extraordinarily violent show. Miami Vice kind of, broke that mindset the TV had about shying away from violence. He went on to create Crime Story, one of my favorite series of all time. Crime series starring Dennis Farina, an actual former Chicago cop, Chicago detective. And this one was set in the 60s. And it's very much like The Untouchables, but a fun, another fun, grounded in reality, extraordinarily violent for television series. And I dug it the most. He went on to direct Manhunter, which is the first Hannibal Lecter movie, and for my money, still the best. Brian Cox plays Hannibal Lecter, and as good as Anthony Hopkins was, Brian Cox is far, far more creepier with a much more restrained performance. Cox is terrifying, even though we never see him out of a jail cell. Again, stylishly made. It's an adaptation of Red Dragon, Thomas Harris's first novel featuring Hannibal Lecter. And it is a nail-biting thriller. It's an excellent police procedural, investigative mystery kind of thing, and a deep dive examination into the mind of serial killers without being horribly exploitative. For the most part, we see the serial killer's actions after the fact, post-mortem. And which makes it all the more frightening to my mind, because we don't actually see the serial killer in action. Heat is next up, and it's Michael Mann's crime epic. He actually remade a TV movie that he had made for NBC called L.A. Takedown. He remade it as Heat, big R-rated film. De Niro, Pacino, Val Kilmer, just a terrific cast. Kind of takes you all over L.A. as Al Pacino, a robbery homicide detective, chases down De Niro and his crew as they try to pull off one job after another, ending in climaxing, I shouldn't say not ending, but climaxing in one of the greatest, most realistic gun battles ever put on film, out on the LA streets, and very much based on a real incident that happened in LA. Okay, his best film by far, crowning achievement. This would be any filmmaker's best film, Last of the Mohicans. Here is a real sea change for Mann. Guy creates these gritty crime dramas, all of a sudden doing this amazing period piece. I could watch this movie over and over and over again. It is simply gorgeously shot. The soundtrack is wonderful. The performances are fantastic. And Mann makes an incredible effort to keep this film in period, with language, the characters' attitudes. This movie does not bow down to any current, moods or zeitgeist. It is firmly set in its period in every way, and it gives me hope, because this film was enormously successful at the box office, and I really think that we could get back to making these kind of movies again, and see success. But to me, this is Mann's crowning achievement. Just an incredible piece of filmmaking. Kadri Suvari. I don't know if that's one word or it's supposed to be split into two, but there you go. The finale of Bane Conquest was an explosive ride with plenty of action, but the story seemed to be hinting at more. That is in issue 12. Bane screams that he will stand as a colossus over an empire of crime. But we still don't know why. What was Bane's motivation for conquest, and why did you want to tell this particular tale? Bane's original attacks on Gotham seemed driven by a need to face Batman, not a desire for world domination. Several loose ends were left hanging, so can you at all share your intended resolution of these, given that DC is unlikely to give you and Graham that opportunity at this point? Yeah, I mean, this is what we wanted, both Graham and I, because, Graham is a close collaborator when we work together, contributing to story. I never, I never put down a word until Graham and I have talked quite a bit on what we wanted to do. And there was a lot of back and forth on this one. And this is where we were always taking Bane, to be sort of a crime warlord, a Napoleon of crime, a Genghis Khan of crime, more aptly. Now, why? Why would Bane want to be at the top of the criminal heap? Well, look at his origin. Bane grew up in a prison where he wasn't content with surviving or getting along. In order to survive, he felt that he had to be on top. He had to be the toughest guy. He had to be the big badass. And so he does. He rises to where he rules as an unquestioned, tyrant over the convicts inside of Peñadora, the prison that he is serving his father's life sentence in. Now, he has dreams about a bat creature, these nightmares that haunt him for whatever reason. Yeah, a bit of a contrivance, but it's a Batman story. We had to get Batman into it. So he has dreams about a bat creature, this demonic bat creature. And when he escapes from Peñadora and hears about Batman, through the criminal jungle telegraph, he realizes that he must face his demon. And he gets to Gotham, and just like Peñadora, he wants to rise to the top of Gotham. He wants to rule Gotham. He wants to take it away from Batman and take it away from all the other criminals and rule as a tyrant, which he, for a while he succeeds. He's running the city. And of course, Batman comes back and defeats him. Now that chapter of his story is over, and he sets his sights higher than Gotham. Now he wants to be the big man in the underworld for the world. And Bane Conquest shows us that story in detail as he takes down one criminal organization after another until he reaches the pinnacle, the big daddy, Cobra. They're the biggest global crime cartel as far as Bane is aware, and he takes down Cobra, but in doing so runs into Intergang, and Intergang, if you're a big DC fan, you know this. Intergang is a sort of mafia backed by Apocalypse. They got their godfather is Darkseid. And so we kind of leave it open at the end that he is now in conflict with Intergang. Now Bane thinks, this is it, man. I'm at the peak of the Olympus of crime, and no one's going to be able to topple me. And he's completely unaware of what he is up against. He is up against the forces of Apocalypse, and that, if Graham and I were ever allowed to get near this character again in comic book form, that is the story we would tell. And it would be, basically Bane triumphant would be our next maxi series. So, could still happen, huh? But I wouldn't bet on it. Well, okay, Christopher Hernandez. All of 1992, you wrote Warzone and left at the end of it. Also started War Journal the same year, but stayed till March 94. Why did you stay longer on War Journal? Seems confusing to switch tones. What type of questions did you ask Mike Baron when you took over War Journal? Warzone was always meant to be an arc book. I wrote the first 2 arcs, mostly because Johnny Romita Jr. said that he would stay on till issue 12, which didn't happen. He was wooed away. They were always trying to woo Johnny away to some other project. And so, he didn't complete the second arc. And then other writers and artists were invited to do generally 5-issue arcs was what we were doing. Now, I came back to Warzone over and over again and did 5-issue arcs with Joe Kubert, John Buscema, Russ Heath. I was always welcome back at Warzone. But Don Daly also gave me Punisher War Journal and ultimately the regular Punisher monthly book. I wrote all 3 of these monthlies to their conclusions because they're all canceled at the same time. So I kind of closed them out. I was there at closing time for the Punisher, and it was my chance. I had to put the stools up and wipe the bar clean and mop the floor. So yeah, there really wasn't a tone, except in Warzone we were encouraged to push the envelope a little bit more. It was still a code book, so there was only so much you could do. But the idea was to tell these done-in-one 5-issue arcs, which would later be collected into trades, some of which have been, some of which have not. So that was the intention. As far as I was concerned, it was just more Punisher stories. Now Punisher War Journal, 3-issue arcs, 1-issue one-shots, 2-issue arcs, whatever, filled the need. But War Journal I particularly like is my run with Gary Quapis, which these covers are all from. Gary and I just sort of went nuts on the title. and these are the most gonzo Punisher stories that we could think up. As far as what did I ask Mike Baron before I took over War Journal, I didn't ask him anything. It was all in his work. His work informed me a lot. I mean, I thought I knew the Punisher until Mike Baron wrote him. And Mike, filled in the gaps, made the Punisher's motivations sharper, made his personality more harsh and brutal. And I really liked that because made Frank Castle more the man for the job. That's what Mike Baron did. And so I really wasn't necessary to ask any questions. And at the time, Mike probably wouldn't have wanted to answer them anyway because I was taking the title over from him, which, we're friends, but it was always a friendly rivalry. There always will be a friendly rivalry between the two of us. And I don't think Mike was in a mood to help me out at that point. But he understood that Punisher was in good hands because I love the character. Gentle Savage, welcome back, Savage. Mr. Dixon, you've mentioned that Bane's character was inspired by Doc Savage in The Man in the Iron Mask and was intended to become the Dr. Doom of DC Comics. But what about his allies who were Bird, Zombie, and Trog, inspired or based on Doc Savage? For those of you who, maybe new to comics, he was a pulp character in the 30s and then did massively well in the 60s with paperback reprints of Doc Savage adventures. And Doc was, the original Superman, basically, the man of bronze. He was just good at everything. He was a big old muscle-bound Mary Sue is what he was. And he had these guys that hung out with him. Graham Nolan is a much bigger fan of Doc Savage than I am. I can't remember what the guys are called, the Terrible Trio, the Fabulous Four. I don't know what they were called, but he had this gang of guys, and they all had an area of expertise. And since it was thought of early on that Bane was basically an evil Doc Savage, he thought he needs, some accomplices. And Graham was all into that, man. He wanted those accomplices. And so I created Bird, Trog, and Zombie. And of course, they're named after 60s rock groups. The Trogs, the Birds, the Zombies. And I came up with a name for them and then fitted them with personalities. I mean, Trog is a guy who probably has a lot more Neanderthal DNA than most people. Bird has a falcon. I get it. Not terribly imaginative, but I didn't want a guy that flew. That seems silly to me. But Bane would not hang out with a guy who flies around with wings. So Bird is a falconer, and Zombie is just called Zombie because he looks like he's dead. He's cadaverous. Maybe he spent a long time in solitary on bread and water at Peñadoro, and it gave him that emaciated heroin chic look. So that's it. That's as simple as it gets. I admit I didn't spend a lot of time on his accomplices because the story was about Bane, Vengeance of Bane, but these guys have grown on me and apparently grown on readers. People like these guys, and when Bane appears and they're not around, people go, "Hey, where's his buddies? Where's his accomplices?" The other thing I liked about this relationship, and Graham and I decided this early on, was these are not henchmen. They're not partners either, but they are very much accomplices. This is Bane's crew, and he will never betray them. He is loyal unto death to his crew, and they are loyal in return to him. And I think that's kind of cool. There's like an honor among thieves between the group. So his relationship with his gang is different than most supervillains with their gangs because, famously, over and over again, we see this where the big bad guy basically sees his henchmen as expendable. And Bane does not see these three in that light. So, Hassan Rogers. I see fight scenes in manga and compare them to current comics, stuff that really shows off a character's intelligence and thinking on the slide. There's more creativity and weight behind them than you see in most comics today. What's the key to writing creative, fun, and weighted fight scenes? Well, manga fight scenes have always been different than American fight scenes. For one thing, they're longer. They take up more real estate. Manga is a different form of comics. It's comics, but manga tends to be more visually driven and take its time. If you've ever watched someone from Asia read manga, they read it at like lightning speed. It's like, how do they even see? They're reading it at like the speed of a movie. And that's what they're set up to be read as. The action is broken up more. The action is more choreographed, more cinematic. We don't see that very often in American comics. The other thing that separates manga fight scenes generally from American comic fight scenes is there's more emotional impact, there's more catharsis, there's more at stake, there's more heart. American comics tend to be the two characters fight, and in the end, there's not really any change in status quo. In manga, people die. Long running characters will just get offed in extraordinarily bloody fight scenes. And this is effective. This makes you pay more attention. The fights are more meaningful. It's not just the 18th rematch between Captain Potato Salad and Mr. Cadaver, or whoever Captain Potato Salad's arch nemesis is. You fill in the blank. So there's more oomph to their fight scenes because they have real consequences. Now, for the most part, American comics, the fight scene, characters fought, but the fight scene wasn't the focus for a long time of the stories. There was a mystery or whatever, and usually the fight was at the very end, and often, especially at DC, it was over in one panel. So there wasn't that big a deal. Then along comes Marvel, and Marvel seems to, there's more action in a Marvel story. There's more violence. It's more a part of the story. And Spider-Man, in particular, begins to have fights in which the end result matters. There's something in those fights. There's more heart. There's more consequences. There's more at stake. There's more at risk for Spider-Man than, say, Superman, Batman, or whatever. And then, of course, you bring in Kirby and the annual, always printed during the summer, Hulk versus Thing battle. And here Kirby is taking up more real estate in the comic. These battles would go on for the bulk of the issue and be cinematically told and all the rest of it like a manga story. And Marvel was doing this and engaging you more and making you care more about the end result of the fight, even though it generally ended in status quo. The Hulk and Thing were somehow separated. They didn't battle to the death. Peter Parker's secret identity was not revealed. Captain America was always victorious in the end, no matter what the odds. And that's what those stories are for. These are superheroes, so that's fine. But Kirby, Ditko, and a lot of the other creators at Marvel managed to get more oodles out of the fight scenes, more of a emotional depth, a reason for fighting instead of just having a fight. And DC was always playing catch up. I remember seeing this cover when I was a kid and being shocked. I mean, stunned. Like finding out I was adopted. I wasn't adopted. But you can imagine if you found out you were adopted, how surprised you were. This cover of Batman, somebody has just effed him up. I mean, he is torn up. His costume is torn. Oh my God! It's a DC comic, and the character is not absolutely impeccably dressed. Somebody has really just kicked the living daylights out of Batman, and you want to. Oh man, I got to read this issue. And of course, it's a DC comic in the '60s, so the interior story delivered nothing like what was on the cover. No real punch at all. But DC was trying, not understanding what Marvel was doing, but they were trying. It's not until Kirby arrives. Whoa, what happened there? Anyway, it's not until Kirby arrives at I'm gonna take that off at Marvel at DC that we begin to see fight scenes with consequences. Particularly the Orion character in New Gods, where there's a lot. Kirby takes the opportunity with Orion in every fight to reveal more about Ryan's character, which is really cool. That's really a cool thing to do. And I don't think anybody had ever done that prior, because what we believe about Orion going into the story is not quite the same as what is revealed when we see him in battle. And each time he's in battle, we see more and more of proof that he is the son of Darkseid. He is not necessarily a hero, or he is a hero tamping down this furnace of rage within him. I mean, he is a monster. And we see it in each succeeding fight, we see it more and more of that, Mr. Hyde aspect of his personality revealed. Now, with all of this, what comics really needed, what American comics really needed, was more of this. And we rarely got more of this. Just the badass fight scene. Just the guy who's just going to take it to the limit, take it to the wall, take it to the last round, and kill everybody in sight. And the reason why this run on X-Men was so impactful is it was delivering that. It was delivering characters that we cared about, real emotional stakes, and extended fight scenes that mattered, or at least appeared to matter. They had the illusion of change, and from there, we get to Frank Miller. Frank Miller took a more cinematic approach to violence, a more cinematic approach to the fight scenes, more impactful in a lot of ways, very manga-esque, and so now we've reached it. There's a new demand for this level of action, which I don't think still in American comics they work the fight scene into the story. It's like in a musical. If you're watching a musical comedy, the songs don't interrupt the story. They continue the story. They carry the story. And a fight scene needs to carry the story. It's not an interruption. It's not just this violent interlude between people talking. It has to be at the heart of the story, because these stories are about conflict, and the conflict has to be an organic part of the story. That's why I'm writing a series called Avalon at Arctoons, and I'll have the link here in the bottom if you haven't seen it before. And it's a superhero epic, world-spanning superhero epic. And what I like about it is it's my own superheroes, so I can do whatever I want to them. So every fight has consequence, because characters die. Characters are, irretrievably damaged, put in the hospital, messed up, sent to prison, all kinds of things happen. Terrible things happen to my lead superhero characters, as well as the villains. And it's freeing to write in this superhero genre without the constraints of, nothing can change. The status quo has to be the same at the end of the story as it was at the beginning, which, no matter how experimental and on the edge and gritty you get with a comic book story with superheroes, hey, they got to be back on that peanut butter jar. They got to be back on those action figures and T-shirts and Funko Pops. So there's a limited amount you can do to them, because they are licensed characters. Not so Avalon. There's no license. Nobody's got a King Ace coffee mug out there. So I can kill the characters off at will, or do whatever I want to them, which is freeing. As far as how to construct a great fight scene, you can do no better than looking at Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan's fight scenes, while they're incredible because he's a terrific stuntman and a great martial artist, and he has an amazing team of stuntmen, but Jackie just doesn't stop there. It's just not kicking and punching and jumping in the air. He always makes sure that it's an interesting setting. This ladder fight from First Strike is just jaw-dropping. I think it took him like a month to film this. And it's set in I believe, an airplane hangar or a construction site or something like that. But he takes advantage of every bit of the environment in the fight and keeps it interesting. Even more so, the fight in the pachinko parlor in Thunderbolt is just dizzying. No CGI epic can match what this fight scene manages to generate. And it's just one of, as in every Jackie Chan movie, these are just one of many awesome fight scenes in these movies. And, this is Jackie Chan at the peak of his powers, but he's also a creator. He's director, producer, contributes to the story. He's helping to choreograph the fight scenes. And he knew that it just was more than two guys punching it out, or one guy against 100 guys punching it out. There had to be consequences, stakes. Real change had to be affected in the story by each fight. Whether Jackie wins or loses, it affects the rest of the story in a very organic way and is carrying the story, not interrupting the story. And that's the thing. I mean, your fight you have to be rooting for one guy or the other in the story, and for a real reason, not just watching two dudes beat the crap out of each other. And there has to be, either a risk, or it's character growth or character development. There has to be something real going on. And if you can do this kind of story and, flip these things on its head and exceed the audience's expectations, as the best of the Rocky films always did, then you got something special. You have a memorable fight scene. And, if you're a movie fan, action movie fan, or an action, any kind of comic fan, most fight scenes are forgettable. You forget about them. They're just sort of by the numbers. You've got to bring a lot to it. It's not a simple thing. It's not just fight here. It's like when people write lame comedies, and it's like here's a joke, here's a joke, here's a joke, here's a joke. But what ties them together? Why do I care? It's funnier if I care about the characters. It's funnier if there's a plot. It's funnier if there's real consequences going on along with the jokes. So, same thing for fights. Nick, your announcement of the upcoming Conan novels that you are writing has piqued my interest. It was announced that Titan Comics will be publishing Conan the Barbarian later this year. In addition to the comic book, there will be a series of novels to be published starting with Conan Blood of the Serpent. Are you working in conjunction with Titan Books? How many novels are you slated to write? Would you ever be interested in expanding to Cull, Solomon Kane, or Bran McMorn? How about El Barak? I think we can use some desert adventures, but that's just me. No, I'm not working with Titan. I'm doing these through Castalia House, who made me the offer of how would you like to write some Conan novels. Castalia is based out of Europe. Conan's copyright ended in Europe, and all of the Howard Conan stories, which are the only ones I'm interested in, are in public domain. And so I was able to use elements, characters, and what have you from those stories. The first novel is called Siege of the Black Citadel. It's a big, ancient warfare action story with Conan in the center, and a very Lovecraftian climax. The second is called The Caravan of the Damned, and it is a desert story. You'll be pleased. It's Conan out in the Zorgir with his desert wolves. They kidnap someone they shouldn't have kidnapped and almost pay the price. And it's got adventure and epic scale and all that jazz, and tons of action. And these novels, I keep them to generally around the length or a little bit longer than Howard's novels. These are not fantasy by the pound. Howard's Conan novels were, basically novellas. They were about generally 25,000 words to 30,000 words. Each of these novels exceeds the 30,000 word count by a little bit. So these are, to my mind, single afternoon reads, which is what I wrote them to be. And I will be writing a third, and that's probably it. I'm going to write a trilogy. And Castalia has told me that once I've written 3 of them, they're going to combine them in a leather-bound edition. So, which I've never had a leather-bound edition. Real leather, bound by a bookbindery owned by Castalia House. So, there you go. But it was an opportunity to write more Conan and be freed of writing Conan. When they first talked to me about it, I thought they wanted me to write Conan comics, which I wasn't really that interested in. They said, have you ever thought about writing a Conan novel? And I was like, hey, I want to write a Conan novel. And I had a plot line by that afternoon. So now for the third one, I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm torn between a sea story or another big epic battle story. I really want to have woolly mammoths as war elephants. have that stuck in my head. So that's probably what it'll be. Probably be some epic fight with Conan, leading mercenaries into the fray once again, and a woman somewhere in the story. So, Creeper Weirdo, I noticed that despite being a satire from a British socialist perspective on the U.S., Judge Dredd has a lot of fans on the right. Why do you think that is, as a conservative fan of Dredd yourself? Yeah, it's socialist, and Alan Grant wrote a lot, so it's anarchists as well writing Judge Dredd, and it's supposed to make fun of Law and Order type characters. And Dredd has famously been described as the villain in his own series. I think it works because it works for conservatives, because it's kind of, while it's meant to horrify the left, it amuses the right for a lot of reasons. I'm equally appalled by what Judge Dredd does, but I also find it funny. This horribly authoritative dictatorship run by the judges, who determine the law and deliver the punishment, often at the same time, and it, but there's this sense that they are effective, which appeals to me. Judge Dredd does keep the peace. He doesn't take any crap. He doesn't have any political concerns. He's about end results, which appeals to me. And of course, to the generally left-wing writers writing it as a satire, as a parody, the joke is that Judge Dredd is ineffective. Mega City 1 continues to spiral out of control despite his best efforts. His war against crime is largely futile. But that appeals to conservatives as well. Conservatives generally have a tragic view of life, that bad crap is going to happen to everybody. And bad crap happens. And there's not a lot you can do about it. And there's nothing you can do to change human nature. And there's a lot of that on display in Dredd as well. So it's almost like an equal opportunity offender, equal opportunity amuser. You can read into Judge Dredd what you want to read. I've read very few Dredd stories that told you what to think about the issue at hand. They leave it up to you. They present this outrageous premise. It really is more. It's a deft satire on life today, and it has been. It has been since its inception. It's a brilliant parody, exaggeration, an extrapolation of our current day social and cultural issues, with this badass character in terrific shoot 'em up crime stories. So I love everything about Dredd, and hats off to all of its creators for creating something this special that everybody can enjoy, no matter who you voted for. So there you go. Hey, Creeper Weirdo Twin Spin. I'm trying to get into more French comics, but can't find many in English. Do you have any suggestions? Yeah, the Cinebook. It's out of England, but they print here in the United States. They're sold through Diamond. I buy them through my subscription service, Gmart. They're available on Amazon, and they've got a hell of a library by now, and it runs the gamut of stuff for little kids to kids in their late teens. And there's every genre you can imagine, from Bigfoot humor to thriller to realistic nonfiction war stories. Great series like Lucky Luke, Valerian, Spirou, and they're reasonably priced. I mean, it's like a 64-page oversized paperback, and you can generally get them for under $10. If you go to their site, sometimes they have sales, and they're even less. Or you can go to Cheap Graphic Novels. A lot of times they're on sale there. I've seen them on sale at Book Depository, thrift books, places like that. But many, many, many volumes. This is a lot of what I read comes out of Cinebooks. And the translations are excellent. Back in the 70s, when we started seeing French and comics reprinted in the United States, the translations were horrible. They were really bad. They were by people that were trying to make them more hip. You had characters in Lucky Luke saying "far out" and "right on." I guess the translators thought that was funny. But these are very good translations that try with some success to recreate the recherche puns that exist in French and translate them into English. But look for Cinebook in the Diamond listings or over at Amazon. Now let's French comics, that's fantastic, but Italian comics as well are some awesome stuff. So you might want to take a look at Epicenter Comics. They're reprinting mostly Bonelli stuff from Bonelli. And they're doing Magic Wind, they're doing Tex, they're doing Zagor. This Zagor book, Last World, I reviewed it a few videos ago. Man, what a book. I mean, it's like a $30 hardcover, but it's a beautiful hardcover. It's really thick. It's like a 400-page epic story with Zagor versus dinosaurs. And Magic Wind is a terrific series. It's sort of a mystical Western. Tex Willer needs no introduction. 80 years now as the top-selling Italian comic. Fantastic Western. So these are cool. The editions are affordable. A lot of affordable paperbacks. Dylan Dog, terrific. Supernatural, and they're presenting some of the best stories in English for the first time. Translations, they could probably use a pass by someone who's more familiar with colloquial English, but it doesn't hurt the storytelling. Some of their phrasing is really weird as they try to approximate Italian phrases into English. It doesn't always work, but kind of gives these stories their own flavor. And they've got a lot of volumes out there, a little hard to find. You can go to Epicenter Comics or you can go to Amazon. This company really needs to break out and promote itself more because they're doing excellent stuff. Like I said, the volumes are, they have these really affordable paperbacks. Then they have these larger, what they call signature volumes and artisan volumes. And even those are reasonably priced, especially for the quality and volume of what you get. You get a big, honking, long, epic comic story in hardcover with absolutely gorgeous art. And these books always include lots and lots of extras, essays and forwards by the authors explaining the research they did and everything else. So, I wish more European comics were available here. I don't know what's going on with Comixology over at Amazon. I hear that they're shutting the doors. So I don't know how much comic material is going to be available for Kindle anymore. But you can get a lot of current French comics on Kindle translated into English. I don't particularly like reading comics on Kindle. But I'd rather just buy the French comics and guess. Guess at what they're talking about, what's going on. Than read them on Kindle, but that's another option. Hey, if you have a question, like these folks had a question, or you have a comment, picture of your dog, your kitty, you just have some opinion you wish to share with me, you go to brunobookstore@gmail.com. It's the most direct way to reach me. brunobookstore@gmail.com. Of course, you're welcome to ask questions right here in the comments section below the video, but I often miss them. I don't see them, or I read them and I mean to get to them and I forget. But I can't ignore brunobookstore@gmail.com because I'm checking it several times a day and plucking your questions out for future use. Now, why I have you, Spin Rack is spinning up, baby. We're getting ready to release our first mobile games. What is Spin Rack? What the hell is Spin Rack? Well, it's a brand new service, comic platform, which takes us far beyond comics. Yes, there will be digital comics, but there will also be mobile games, merchandising, eventually entering into the metaverse. Now we've got 2 mobile games we're working hard on to release very, very soon, within the next week or so. And following that will be a full 3D game. And these are all based on characters created by, separately and together by myself and Graham Nolan. So we're launching first with Law Dog, My Sister Suprema, and Joe Frankenstein. But the rest of the vast, and maybe you're not aware of how vast it is, the vast universe of creator-owned stuff that Graham and I own will be the basis for Spin Rack. And eventually we're going to invite other creators in to join us, other comic creators in to join us. This is for my money, this is the evolution of postmodern comics. This is where we're going, and Spin Rack is leading the way. This takes us beyond crowdfunding so that independent comics producers can basically have access to the same kind of licensing, merchandising, ancillary deals that the big two negotiate for us, except we get a bigger slice of the pie. It's a much better place. It's a fairer place. It's a more, I hate to use the word equitable because its meaning has been, altered in recent years, but it is a more equitable way for creators to bring their comics to the public and reach a vaster audience. This brings us out of comics into a new world, bringing our characters to the attention of the people in the gaming community, the rest of the entertainment community, as well as helping us reach our own comic book fan base, which if you've ever tried to do through social media is very difficult. But Spin Rack's going to make that happen. It's making it happen for Graham and I. It will make it happen for others. So I'll put links below to the Spin Rack Facebook page. If you could do me a huge favor and go to the Spin Rack Facebook page and join up there and put a like down there. Machete your way past the Facebook algorithms and give us an attaboy. That would be enormously helpful to us. And also the Spin Rack webpage. I'll have the links to all of that down below. Hey, that's it for this week. I want to thank you for watching, listening. Your thanks, your subscriptions, your likes, your comments, your questions. I love it all, people.